I know a lot of people dream of traveling, and they dream of being in a position to help their grandkids and doing a lot of things in retirement. And some of that just may not be possible, but that doesn't mean retirement's not possible.
Right.
And I think that, faced with, the option of, grandma and grandpa working until they're in their 70s, or, maybe them not having quite as much spendable cash, but being available and more, being able to spend more quality time with them. I think all those grandchildren would tell you what that choice would be.
Yeah.
And, it may not be taking trips to Hawaii every year, right? It just may not be. And I think, tempering some of that expectation is warranted in some of these situations. But, again, it just depends on how bad you want it.
Right.
And, it's like, if that's really important to you, then, that might mean delaying that new car that you get every 4 years for an extra couple of years, and taking that car payment that you would be making and putting it into an IRA or something, or Roth or a brokerage account or anything really, and just getting a little ahead here and a little ahead there. And we see it all the time. We see people who just have unrealistic expectations of what their retirement should look like. And a lot of times, it's just it's not realistic. And, again, I think once people settle into that and they get used to being retired, in that, living in the very modestly and that sort, I think they're fine. Like, it's fine. It's not. But a lot of times we have to talk to clients about, hey, do we really need to spend this money now? Do we really need to take this trip, or do we really need to? And a lot of times, in all honesty, where a real problem occurs in people's retirement is this real need that people feel to help their adult children.
Yeah.
I can't believe how often this occurs and becomes an issue for people who are living fairly modest retirements, where they have an adult child that gets into some sort of financial situation, and they feel the need, almost feel obligated to bail that person out financially when they really don't have the assets and to do it. And that's that's a real issue that people need to understand, is like, look, that wasn't part of our plan. Right. I've seen this happen time and time again, and this is more of a psychological issue that goes on within these families of this need to fulfill to help these adult children who, in all honesty, guys, I think one of the reasons that I've been so successful financially is because I knew I didn't have that safety net. I didn't have anybody to go to. My parents weren't in a position to help me financially. And because they weren't, and because I knew that, I worked harder. I was more driven. I was always making sure that I would never put myself in a situation to have to hold my hand out and ask for help, because I knew there was no help there. And, these adult children, just are, that generation is just a different generation. And they don't mind at all, and they feel this entitlement for whatever reason to, even though they're 37, when mom and dad pay for college, they put food on the table and kept them clothed and safe for 18 years and did all the things right, that at 37 they can come to them and say, hey, I'm going through a really nasty divorce and I'm out of money and I need $10,000 from you to help me get through this divorce or whatever. And it's like, hey, you need to be able to say no. That is not your issue. That is, you have a very finite amount of assets that are allocated to creating your income in retirement. And you need to be able to look that adult child in the eye and say, you got yourself into this and you're going to have to find your own way out of it. And that is something that I see that is just a lot of parents nowadays that of adult children just don't have they just can't do it.
They can't. And we've even seen, in that example, that's, hey, I need this one-time help. We've seen situations where the parents who are retired and again on a fixed budget feel the need to enhance the adult child's lifestyle. It's like, hey, so-and-so, my child's been through a tough time emotionally. They need to be on this trip to, it's like some discretionary thing. And that one's even more frustrating. It's like, it's so good to be able to help. And a lot of our planning is to, give people in retirement the ability to help, whether there's kids or grandkids, whatever it is, people really want to do that. But if you're on a finite budget, we don't have the money to send the kid on a 3-week trip to Italy because they've had a tough emotional year. You know what I mean? We've literally had these combos. So, make sure that it fits in. Stewart, you had a really good quote when we were talking about college and these kind of things. It's great to be able to help kids through college and all that stuff, but there's no, what do you say? There's no loans for retirement. And that one really hit me. You told me that when I first started in the business. And it's true. There's no loans for retirement. Student loans it's nice to not be able to have them, but they're very low interest. They're super reasonable. They're often in forbearance, and there's a lot of different plans, and there's low income plans. There's so many. Student loans are not unaffordable. They're very, very reasonable, but there's no loan for retirement. You can't take out anything to do that. And that quote really stuck with me.
There's no loans, there's no grants, there's no scholarships, there's none of that for retirement. And a lot of times when adults are trying to decide, do I, up the percentage contribution to my 401k, or do I take that money and save it in a college 529 plan or something, that your priority should always be retirement.
100%.
Always. If you're making that decision and you're struggling with that, just let me help you.
Yeah.
Like that is not, there's no decision to make. Again, they can get loans for college, they can get grants, they can get scholarships, there's all kinds of resources available to get them through school. They can join the military like I did and have the military cover that bill. Right. They can do a lot of things. You can't do any of that when it comes time for retirement. You are stuck with what you've done and how much money you've saved and where you've saved it and all that good stuff. So yeah, that's a great point, Mitch. We see that a lot.